Vas a tener que mutear tu micrófono, Lenny. Ahí está. Una bulla de la patada.
Pues, good morning, brothers. Sorry about that. I've just been talking to Lenny, and he's the guy in charge of all the material. And my son Chris just mentioned something to him in Spanish, and so my brain went to Spanish. But then I'm excited to be able to be with you today, and good to be able to talk to you. Well, we're going to be talking about, I think, an exciting and an interesting idea, and that is how to find and train leaders, how to find and train leaders. And it's a subject very dear and close to my heart. And so we're looking forward to talking about that. And so I want to first let Chris have anything to say that he'd like to say. Chris, you want to make mention of anything?
We'd love to see your faces if at all possible. Love to see when you're in the room. It's awesome to see everybody. So I would say that I'm excited about this meeting today. I don't know of anything that my dad is more of an expert in than this, and I can't wait to ask him a bunch of questions about it as well. Especially as I have the privilege of being the financial advisor for a lot of people. And it's the funnest thing ever because I get to get on the phone with them and we talk about money for about 13 seconds. And then we get to talk ministry. And it's probably one of my funnest things is helping missionaries out. And so I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of questions that are going to come up just because of having conversations with them. So I'm excited about it. And this is my new layout. My wife just got through building these bookshelves in my office. And for anybody who's been to Arequipa before, there's Misty behind us. And excited to be here with you guys today.
Misty and the Catholic Church.
That's what my wife said.
That's the Catedral. That's the main Catholic temple in all of Arequipa. And during one of the earthquakes, I can't remember what year, but it knocked the towers off. And so that was pretty crazy to have that happen. And so, but anyway, I love the office. I think Andrea's done a great job. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit in a second, but I want to see if you can see this picture. I don't know how to do things very well yet, but let me see if you can see that picture. Can you see the picture?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's when I say I want to talk to you about finding and training leaders. Finding and training leaders. And in this picture, one of those, none of those guys except Chris are actually in what I would call faithful ministry today. One of them, his name is Delbert, and he told me, he said, you know how John loved Jesus? He was always beside him. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, he just learned about that. And he said, that's who I am. I will always be with you. And he didn't last very long. Then beside him is a guy that ended up trying to steal 2 church buildings. And then there's Chris as a little young boy. Well, he's probably 12, 13 in that picture. And then the other guy, he has really messed up in quite a few ways. So anyway, they don't always work out when you're starting with them. But hey, I just thought it'd be good to go over some of that and let you see that. I think it helps you to realize where I started. And to realize that things weren't, I think sometimes y'all think that things were a lot different than they were. Here's a picture of half of the church auditorium. That's a picture of half the church auditorium, and it was in a room.
No, that's not half, Dad. There were 4 seats on one side and 2 on the other. So that's 2/3.
I got both sides. I can show you.
I got you.
Okay, I can show you. So that's one side, and then let me see here if I got the other one in my favorites, because trying to keep them separated. But it ends up being 4 on 4, which I didn't remember either.
I thought it was 4 on 2.
But it's just amazing amazing when you consider where we were and what God ended up doing.
How many people would you say have fallen by the wayside that you started working with, Dad?
Oh, good night. 50, 60%.
How many of them don't? Go ahead.
This is the church later on. That's the church. That's
Dr. Jolly's calling you, Dad.
That's the same group of people. How do you know that?
Because it says it on your iPad. So let me talk to people. Answer him. You need to answer him.
No, it's just about my appointment tomorrow.
Okay. Well, that's his cancer doctor, guys. So if you're wondering why I would say he needs to answer him, that's why.
And then this is the when we were all together with all the churches, all the guys have started all over the city. And so I want to talk to you about that today, finding and training leaders. And so, Chris, you go ahead and say a few things there, and then I'm going to talk about what's going on with Alignment Ministries, and we'll jump into the discussion.
Okay, so I'm honestly going to ask questions more than anything else. I would like for you to talk to people about how to find, okay, what does it look like when you're finding and training leaders when you're on deputation? And then what does it look like when you're in language school? And because there's so many different phases of that. I would love to hear. So you talk to Trent Coker, and he's just, he's wrapping up deputation. And you talk to a Nate Wilkerson, who is on the field, just finishing language school and starting up. And so you got all these different stages. Can you just kind of walk them through what that looks like at the different stages?
I'll hold off on talking to you about Alignment Ministries for a bit. We'll talk about that. I think one person that I would strongly suggest that y'all talk to if you're on deputation is David Gardner. David, I think all of us have seen God call men and get into ministry. And so I will talk to you a little bit about doing some of that. But David became Robert Canfield. David talked to Robert all the time. Robert had no intentions of being in the ministry. He took Robert with him to Peru within a few weeks of getting to know him. And Robert is today one of the most phenomenal men of God I know. If you can find Iglesia Bautista Libertad's webpage, which is the new church, and I've sent it out on Alignment Ministries, you can find it through that. You can listen to Robert's message on Sunday night. It was to me, and I think to all of us, and it's in English because he speaks English, and then my grandson Benjamin was translating it. David made friends with quite a few people while he was on the road, and they got into ministry, and he helped them over the hump of being just somebody who's not sure they're going to be in a ministry all the way to ministry. I don't know how you beat that. So he did that because David is just friendly. And Chris can tell what he did. What I used to do is that I'd talk to everybody I meet, and I'd say, man, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with your life? If they would show any interest, I usually would give them a book like The Master Plan of Evangelism or some other book. And I carried them with me. I carried cases of books, and I gave them out almost in every church. And if they showed interest, and I wrote them hard copy letters back in the day. I sent them about one a month, and to try to keep missions in front of them. And several of them ended up going to the mission field. Some are still in the mission field. And so I think you can do that. So that's the deputation side of it. Chris, what's something you did while you were on deputation and helped to get people in?
Well, probably Mark Coffey was mine. That I was able to. I went and preached. I was 19 years old, and I went and I preached and at Whitfield, and Mark Coffey, who had given me a black eye a couple of years before, and he ended up traveling with me, and I spent tons and tons of time with him. And he, I would say Mark would be it's all about spending time and locking in on somebody and spending time with them. And David's had 3 or 4. Now, all of them aren't with us anymore, but David's had 3 or 4. I do believe that David is probably the best person to ask that question to. But on deputation, what I did was go in and I just said, I'm going to spend time with people. I'm going to find anybody that's interested. I'm going to talk to them. And, from Mark, a lot of missionaries came from Mark that he ended up getting different missionaries in. And a lot of those aren't with us. The same as the story of the same as the story of the Peruvian guys that are there. Many of them have gone different directions in ministry. Many of them are not serving Jesus. And I don't know if some of them were even saved before, but all you have to do is God doesn't call us to choose the fruit. God calls us to plant the seeds. And so my big question for you on deputation would be, what seeds have you planted that could turn into recruiting someone for missions? And if you've planted the right seeds, what we know is this: if you plant seeds, don't worry. God's the one that sends the rain. God's the one that sends the sun. And over time, those seeds will produce. Galatians, I grew up always hearing Galatians as the scariest passage in the world, Galatians 6:6-9. But it says, be not weary in well-doing. Actually, what he's talking mainly about is not about sin biting you in the butt. It's more about you doing the right thing, and God will do things with that. Does that mean that sin will also have its consequences in you? Absolutely, no doubt about it. But the what he's really talking about there is, don't be weary in well-doing. Don't be weary in planting the seeds. So don't look around and go, I don't know why this missionary has gotten this and the other missionary has gotten that. Ask yourself this week, what seeds have I planted for the training of leaders? What seeds have I planted for the training of leaders? That young man that's interested in missions, that you're spending time with, that you're talking to, what seeds have I planted? If you plant enough seeds, before long, you will see the results of those seeds. And so, I do think David and I had an advantage that most don't have, because we lived through a ministry and watched what God did with someone who invested his life in others. And that's what Dad did. And so when we were on deputation, we were like, well, of course we need to do the same thing. So a lot of any success that I've had comes from the fact that, hey, I was around. It's just natural to me to invest in young men and young people and watch God do stuff. So, I don't know what else I'd say. That's kind of where I would start with it.
Talking on deputation and all of it, we believe that you have not because you ask not, because God said that. And so if God said it, it has to be true. And so I would strongly suggest to all of you that every day of your life, while you're on deputation, while you're on furlough, while you're traveling in the United States, that you constantly say, God, give me a man. God, give me a man. God, give me somebody. When you're on the field, it's in language school and in that early training time, God, give me a man. Ask God to give you one. And then when you start your ministry, ask him. I would be asking him now if I were you and I was on deputation. I'd be asking God to give me my first men for my church. And so it's a matter of prayer. The second thing is, I wrote this yesterday. I'm not sure what day it comes out on my blog. I think maybe today or tomorrow, but you can't make your friends be friends, but you can be a friend. So when you're dealing with people out there, in the churches, you can do what you're supposed to do. So believe in them. Most everybody wants somebody that loves them and believes in them and accepts them and will treat them like somebody. And I'm not trying to throw down on any missionaries anywhere, but too often missionaries come into a church on deputation and they have no time for the young guy. They're looking for the rich guy in the church. And they're looking for the guy that they think might line their pocket or give them the best offering. When there are young people there that are just dying, they have spent their life dreaming about someday being somebody for God. And so pay attention to the young guy. Pay attention to the guy that's 15 to 25. Try to talk to him, get him some material, stay in touch with him, believe in him. Don't be condescending. Don't talk down to them. Don't be manipulative. Don't set ultimatums. I've never told them, if you don't do this, bless God, I'll do that. You don't do that. That is unchristlike in every form, in every shape. What you do is you say, I love you, and here's the opportunity, and I'm there for you. And so that's what I'd suggest all along the ministry. So David's the guy to talk to. When you're in language school and your first time, I would say Jeff Bush might be one of the best people to talk to. When Jeff got to Peru, in no time at all, and Jeff's personality, he loved people and believed in people and cared about people. And Jeff was meeting everybody. And so on a Sunday morning, Jeff can't hardly talk Spanish well at all. And he would walk in the church and 5 or 6 young men would come in with him. And these are guys he met playing soccer, or he met one of them was the guy who cut his hair. I mean, and that guy's still in church as far as I know. So he would meet people like crazy. And I don't think a Sunday went by. Everybody knew when Jeff comes in, he brings in his little army with him. And that was always so wonderful to watch him come in. Then he came to me, and at that point in my ministry, we'd never used English as a second language. And Jeff came to me and he said, one day, I want to teach English as a second language in the church and see if I can get new people to come. And I said, well, that's a waste of time, Jeff. I said, it just won't work. But I believe in you, and if you believe you can pull it off, you do it. And if it works, I'm going to tell people it was my idea. And so Jeff went out, and at the end of, 8 weeks, we had a graduation, probably 50 people graduating, getting their English diploma, and people started going to our church from that. He did a fantastic job. And since then, many of you have used an English ministry, but if you're part of or were part of what would have been considered my ministry for a while, that's where that started. Jeff was great at it. When Jeff left language school, he left his mark.
Yeah.
He left his mark in the way he gave while he was there. He left his mark in the way he gave. He left his mark in the way he discipled. He left his mark in the way he led people to Christ. He left his mark. He made a difference. And there are still people in Arequipa that would be very in love with him and thankful to God for him. So I think you can do that. And then when you get to the field, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
And we all have one thing in common. David has a lot of people that have flopped. And Austin Gardner has a lot of people that have flopped. Austin Gardner probably has more people that have flopped than anybody because he's been in it longer. Jeff Bush, the guys that he brought, there's only 2 or 3 of them left, but they're still in church. They love Jesus. So I believe that a lot of times people think that discipleship's not worth it, mainly because of the success rate. And that's, Jeff, I'm sitting there thinking of names. Oh, this guy, he's not out there anymore. And this guy's not out there, but there are people that are left. And so keep that in mind as you're doing this. It's not about the success. And I believe our biggest mistake at every step of our ministry is that we mistake our priorities. I think you need to know exactly what your priorities are right now. If your priority on deputation is raising support, then you have missed the mark. But I believe that most people, that's what their priority is on deputation. And in language school, their priority is learning the language. If that is your priority in language school, then you have missed the mark. Your priorities, first and foremost, are your relationship with God. And then the second thing you have got to focus on ministry-wise is raising leaders, bringing men that you can teach about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that priority doesn't change whether you're learning a language, whether you're raising money, whether you're on the field. So be careful not to mistake your priorities. It's so easy to do. You walk away going, no, my priority right now is I've got to learn the language. That's not your priority. Your priority is you have to have your relationship with God has to be right. Not only that, you have to have a great relationship with your family. You have to make sure and be spending time in the Word. You also have to make sure that you are looking, that God sends you men, that you're praying for that, and that you're operating, looking for that to be true. So don't mistake your priorities. You need to know what those are. The be, do, serve, train. You need to make sure that you know what those are in every step of your ministry, no matter where you're at. So when you're in Taiwan, you're doing the right thing. You're in Burkina, you're in Benin, you're in Turkey, you're wherever you're at, you are doing the right thing, because you know what your priorities are. Those priorities matter. And so keep your priorities straight. And if you're on, if you're on deputation right now, you might be like, well, I've really not kept my priorities in that order. Well, keep that in mind as you go forward while you're on deputation to make sure that your priorities are right. Do not allow your priorities to be mistaken.
I think that is fantastic. By the way, I was looking for a picture of the other side of the auditorium. This one is my daughter, Stephanie, sitting there. And you can see how many rows we have. So it's 4 on each side. So 8, and it's 3 deep, 4 deep.
No,
so 4
not a bad.
There's another 4, and that's Alberto there too. And let me just say this about Chris saying you're losing people. I think if you're smart, you shouldn't have to have anybody tell you that. Jesus lost one. He chose him, and he knew who he was before he chose him. And you don't know who people are. You can't see in people's hearts. And he lost 1 out of 12. I used to tell our guys, if you can keep 1 out of 12, you'll be doing good.
Yeah.
Jesus lost 1 out of 12. We keep 1 out of 12. Now, I think I have probably averaged better than 1 out of 12. But I think it does us real good to have in mind that we're going to lose a lot of people.
How bad does it hurt when you do lose people, Dad? What does that feel like?
So for me, I love every one of them that I work with, every person. And when they leave me, it is betrayal. It hurts to the depths of my heart. It hurts beyond what I could ever explain. It is like my life ended. I don't really, I've experienced it this year and within the last year. And it hurts beyond anything I could ever explain. And sometimes you'll think, well, maybe it wasn't worth it. I got hurt. I got betrayed. You're feeding the dog and the dog bit your hand. Does that mean you never feed the dog again? And we didn't do it for the people. We did it for Jesus, right? We agree with that. We did it for Jesus, and Jesus keeps better records than people here on earth do. And he knows what's going on. And so I would just say to all of you that keep doing what you're doing, and don't let the discouragement stop you from doing what you know you ought to do.
Yeah. And that you think about it, that's the Bible says that you don't start to build a tower without first calculating the cost. You need to understand that the cost of discipleship is way more. The cost of leader training is way more than you can even imagine if you've not done it before. It will hurt in ways that you have never hurt before. You will hurt in places you did not know existed yet. When you get hurt, you will have joy like you've never had before. But you need to understand the pain and you have to understand this is part of the cost of training leaders. And so if you want to be a pastor, you can be a pastor with a lot less pain if you don't train leaders, because when you train leaders, you give them your all, and then they abandon, and when they do, it hurts. And so, but that doesn't change our call to train leaders.
Risk nothing, lose nothing.
Yep.
Risk nothing, lose nothing. I would say to you, you can't make much of a difference if you don't train leaders. And so I would, Jesus is hanging. In a way, we say Jesus only had one go bad, but he's hanging on the cross naked. He's been spit on, his beard's been plucked, his hair is all torn to pieces, his face, his back, his body. According to Isaiah 52, he's hardly recognizable as a human being. He has 12 very loyal men. One of them said, I'll never leave you or never forsake you. And he looks down from the cross, and only one of the guys is standing there, and that's John. He looks down, there's only one standing there. Now, later, they'll be back. All but one will be back. But I just want to remind you that training leaders hurts deeply. Training leaders hurts deeply. I'll tell you this, being a parent hurts.
Yeah.
When you have children, if you raise them to some maturity, I mean, when they get hurt, it nearly kills you. When something bad happens to them, it nearly kills you. Then when they get angry with you, I read on Facebook, I just saw a post yesterday that said, this woman's in and said, I'm looking for books on how to parent teenagers. And I've looked into the parenting section of different sections. I can't find it. And the librarian said, look in the horror section. And so the joke was, it's horrible trying to raise teenagers. And yet the greatest joys I've ever had in my life being a dad. And so that hurts, but what gives you much costs you much. And so I would just remind you of that. Now, let me talk to you briefly about getting on the field. And I don't see him. He may be listening via YouTube, but Stephen Underwood is doing a fantastic job at what I teach about getting young people. He's in Argentina, and they rented a building, and there's about 8, 9, something like that, young men that are just hanging around him all the time. Some of them are younger than 15. In fact, the other day, he had some of them stole the offering or half the offering. I mean, that's what happens when you have disciples that are close by. And so I just think what he's done is he's turned Friday night into what I tell you is a way to get these young people. When you're looking for the young people, what you have to be careful about is where you got your sights set. So when you're looking for people to train for the ministry, you got to, in your head, you got to think a second. Now, who do you train for the ministry? If you were in America and you wanted to look for somebody to train for ministry, you would probably have a big college, like out on the West Coast or out at Crown College or down at Pensacola or up at Hyles Anderson or I think Sam Davidson or whatever his name was has a college. And they don't typically go for 45-year-olds. They typically go for young guys getting out of high school. Some of them will get the older guys in, and they're the guys that have been on the military base and they're 22 years old. And so typically what happens is when you're out in the community, you're thinking, I'm going to go get that family. And I think on visitation and soul winning, that's a good thing to do. In other words, it's a two-edged sword. While you're trying to build a church, you are going for men and you are going for families. But when you're looking for men to train, Jesus trained teenagers. There's another Facebook post, and probably could find it on the Facebook page for Alignment Ministries, because I think I put it over there. The guys that started the United States of America, an amazing number of them were under the age of 30. So what you want to do is, who do you focus on? If you're focusing, you're getting ready to have a Revolutionary War. The Ben Franklin in the group is going to be the most unusual one of all. Most 50, 60-year-old men, they're thinking in terms of taking care of my family. I've finally made a life. I'm getting somewhere with myself, and I do not need to rock the boat. But an 18-year-old is thinking in terms of, I don't know what I'm going to do in my life. So set your focus on looking for these young people. You're going to get adults for your church, but at the same time, you're looking for these young people. And that's who you're going to have coffee with. That's who you're going to spend the majority of your time with. You want to do all your church services, Sunday morning, Sunday night, and midweek. You want to do all of them for families and adults. That's what you keep there. But the majority of your time, you want to be out looking for these younger guys that can be trained to be in the ministry. Who's in the military? People like me are not in the military, and if they are, they're in an office job.
Telling young people.
Telling
young people what to do.
Telling young people what to do. And so I just want to challenge you to set your sights on that. And I think that in your head, you're thinking to yourself, well, if I have a bunch of kids around me, I'll just have a kids ministry. Not if you wait a few years, the kids ministry will grow into an adult ministry. But I would keep looking for those young people. I don't care how many years you've been doing it. You got to keep getting a fresh crop of young people, a fresh crop of young people.
And now, how do you do that? So how do you get a fresh crop of young people?
I think your constant thought is I've got to be doing things where I am meeting with and talking to and encouraging and challenging these young people. So, when I was working at Vision, we started things like the summit, and then we started a camp, and that camp's sole purpose was to challenge young people to be missionaries. Sole purpose. That's all I wanted. The summit, challenge people to be missionaries. People criticized me because they said I was pushing people to be in missions. And I said, okay, I can take that criticism, because in all honesty, if everybody else is pushing them to be in business, and everybody else is pushing them to be worldly, everybody else is pushing them to be making a lot of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find every activity I can, and I'm going to get as many young people in it as I can. So on the mission field, even if you keep doing this, you teach your people that are younger to get more young people. So like our Bible college, when I left from Peru after the first term, I was there in 88, 89, and 90. And then I came home on furlough because in the mission I was with, my language school counted as a part of my first term. So that was 4 years. And I came home. When I left, I had five guys in my Bible college. When I arrived, the guys had really messed everything up. My whole ministry had fallen apart. So on the negative, I'd lost just about everything. Every one of them had to step out of the ministry. It was a horrible, the most excruciating and horrible time I'd ever been through. Probably the only thing I can say, there's been a couple other things in my whole life that have been worse than that stage of trials. And then when it all settled down, and the college starts in March, the fall season starts in March. So in March, I cranked up the Bible college with over 30 students. Did you hear that? Those five, during the year I'd been gone, even though they weren't even doing all the good stuff they should have been, had rounded up 30. So 24 more people were there. And so we had 30. And we met in an office there at the church. And then a year or two later, I had to divide up and have more classes. And I ended up renting buildings and buying other buildings around the church. And so I just think all the time you got to be thinking. I've always considered myself to be an overgrown youth director. I don't know if that helps answer that at all, Chris.
Yeah, well, and so here's a couple of the things that I wrote down. If you saw me roll over, I rolled over to get something to write on, because there's a lot that I'm listening and learning from and thinking about. But I would say the number one thing that you have to understand is your ministry has to be exciting. And what I mean by that is this: if you're not careful, you're going to take the methodology of expository preaching and think that since that's the number one showcase you think you did on deputation, and even in language school, because you're working in an established ministry, everybody talks about how your preaching does. But you have to understand that your preaching is going to be a very small part starting out to keep your ministry exciting. You're going to, when you look at the etymology of the Greek word here, what you have to understand is when you do that, young people will sit through it, but they'll sit through it when they know there's exciting stuff on the other side of it. So you need to make sure and be very, very careful to make sure that your ministry is always exciting. Your ministry has a purpose. Your ministry has a place that it's going. Your guys need to feel like your team is going to do something great, and that they don't want to sit on the sidelines and watch that happen. They want to be a part of it. They have to know that that's the truth. When Jesus goes to the disciples, I will make you fishers of men. I honestly think that we miss sometimes what he says, because he says, I will make you fishers of men. And we think the focus there is on fishers of men, but the focus is actually on the words, I will make you. He was going to make them into what they were going to do. So you have to have a ministry that's exciting. The second thing you have to understand is this: as an American in a foreign country, it gives you a major leg up. People are already attracted to and asking what you are and who you are and why the world are you where you're at. that gives you a benefit, because as people ask that question, so what are you doing here? Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is, man, we're about to do some crazy cool stuff, and we got some people signed on. We're doing this. And as you're telling that, people are going, how can I be a part of that? So make sure it's exciting. Maybe being American gives you a major leg up. And so make sure that you use it, but make sure you don't base your ministry around the 3 services a week in your church. You've got to make sure that you're giving hope, and you're sharing what's going on, and you're excited about what's going to happen, so that people will want to sign on. We have a very difficult time getting people to play for the Atlanta Hawks. And we're a pretty good team, and we make it to the playoffs pretty much every year. But nobody really expects us to win the thing. They've got to feel that they are missing out on the biggest opportunity of their life if they decide that they don't want to sign on and be a part of what's going on. Because guess what? They are. And so it's not just about their salvation, but it's about training them. So those are the things that I would tell you that you make sure and emphasize with them, is that, where you're going, what's going to happen, and how they can be a part of that. And when they feel that they can be a part of it, you're not dragging people along. People sign up for crazy stuff like that all the time. So that's what I would tell you to focus on. I did have on here to add, I'm sure you got a lot to add to what I just said there, but I'd love for you to give a little bit about how they messed up, your first term, how they messed up, just so the guys can understand how, the kind of stuff they're going to be dealing with in the future.
Well, I don't know if we want to discourage all that bad this morning, this afternoon, for many of you that are watching around the world. First, let me just say this. Don Bond, who's in heaven, said, we need to be preaching more of our deputation messages in our new church. He said, where is the fire and the excitement? When's the last time we told them we're going to try to reach the world with the gospel message? And he said, so what happened, we got here and we settled into life as usual and as normal. And Don, I never saw Don have a large church at all. He did train a lot of young people, and he was a very faithful servant of God. He helped me a lot. I loved him then, love him now. But I tried to preach deputation style messages. With that little room that you just saw the pictures of, if you look at the earlier part, I used to say to them in that room, if you'll come with me and go with me, we're going to grab Peru by the tail. Because we're at the bottom end of Peru, we're going to shake it all the way to the head. We're going to turn this country upside down with the gospel message. I preached all the time that they were involved in something extremely exciting. And so I'm going to talk to what Chris asked in just a second, but let me just show you this. If you want that church service to be exciting, all week long, as you're training these young people and spending time with them, you're telling them harvest time is coming. So like, you got to make it super exciting and super clear, and you got to just preach the house down. And it's better to sing less songs or whatever, unless you can do it well. But what you've got to do is, I'm meeting with those young guys that you saw Chris, the picture of Chris as a boy with them. And I'm saying on Sunday morning and Sunday night and Thursday night for us back then, those are harvest times. So now we're going to go out during the week, me and the guys I'm working with, and we would actually spend probably 25 hours a week out giving out gospel tracts and inviting people to come to church. And preaching in the market or doing whatever I could. We were everywhere. And so people got used to it. All of them were wearing ties. They were all young boys. So I was wearing a tie and they were wearing a tie. It was pretty obvious. And my truck was very unique. And so when I pulled into an area, everybody knew us. So we get out of the truck and just start passing out gospel tracts and then witnessing the people, inviting people. We would go to every store and put up invitations in the stores. We were doing everything we could. And then I would tell them, we're praying like crazy and we're inviting like crazy. And I'm teaching you like crazy. And this is how you're going to handle the invitation when it's given. This is what you're going to do when this happens. This is what you're going to do when this happens. And then game day is Sunday morning, and game day is Sunday night, and game day is Thursday night. and we're going to go crazy trying to get people saved. And so they came to church anticipating. They came to church anticipating. Now, for the negatives, I really don't want you to know. I'd like to save you the hurt. And if you don't want to do these things, if you don't want to get hurt, start a small church. You can, if you stay there long enough, you can get up 30, 40, 50 people. And you don't have to train anybody. And then when you die, that church can die. When I came home on furlough, the guys, one thing they did, I stored all my stuff, and they got in the storage place, stole stuff. Then they stole our truck out of there, and I'd hidden the key one place and the battery one place, and they got the truck out, put a battery in it, found the key, and then they started using it like a bus around the city. So they'd stop at the corner and say, we'll take you to town if you'll pay us this and that, and kind of like an illegal bus line. And they did that till they blew the motor up. So when I got home, my truck, the motor was blown and I couldn't drive it. They had they'd gone out and gotten drunk and had alcohol to drink, a couple of them. Some of them had sex in their church buildings, which are little bitty offices. But they'd had sex with girls on what would have been their altar. They laid a mattress there. They stole money.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
Like the worst, most disgusting things that you could ever imagine is what you're opening yourself up to when you decide to train leaders. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Well, it has been for me. One of the guys stole my daughter's virginity. He was on staff and married with a kid. They came back, and I didn't throw them away because I don't believe in throwing anybody away. I've never turned my back on anybody, never walked away from anybody. Had it done to me plenty of times, but that's not who I am. And one of the men who's in heaven now, his dad's Miguel Murillo's father-in-law and Victor Ocampo's dad. When I told the church that everybody was stepping down and I'd have to help them get their lives right with God. Miguel, who loved me very much, Miguel Ocampo, so told people around the church, the American doesn't understand that boys will be boys, and they've got to sow their wild oats. And he was a good Christian, quote unquote. I wish I could tell you that I saw lives radically changed that never messed up. I can't tell you that. I've seen some that have really done well. Some of the guys now I think are doing pretty well.
But we don't even tell all of their story when we tell the story, because even the guys that are doing phenomenally well, man, the stuff that they went through, you know, I was 19 years old and had trained a young man, loved him, did everything I could to help him. And back then, of course, everybody had to wear a tie to go to church. And so we were at the youth meeting, and a guy walks in with his tie, and you could smell alcohol all over his breath. And I looked at him and I said, dude, you've been drinking. You know better than that. I said, what's going on? And he said, I want to talk to you. He took me outside and grabbed his tie, threw it in my face, and said, you've never loved me. You've always been nothing but an imperialistic American, and was as mean could be. He did that 2 or 3 times. He now pastors here in the States. His name's Ronald Tobias. I remember going home just bawling my eyes out. I remember going home and Dad was like, son, I'm sorry, but this is just This is part of what it takes to train leaders. And you never know, he might be back. And I'm like, Dad, you don't understand the things he said to me. You don't understand the words that came out of his mouth. You do not understand how much drinking he has done. You don't understand he's out partying and he's out doing. And Dad said, if he's saved, the Holy Spirit will not let him get away with this. He says, just be patient, be kind, pray for him, love him, and let him know that you love him. And so, yeah, everybody loves the story of Ronald to be, yes, but if I could tell you the pain that it caused to get him, I don't even talk to Ronald that much anymore, but he's a great man of God. God's using him. But man, the pain to get to where he's at now is not, we don't tell all of that story because you don't tell all the bad stuff about your children. You don't tell all the bad stuff about your children. That's just, better than that. So there's nothing more painful than what you're going to go through when you decide that you're going to place people in a position to where they can actually hurt you. Like you are going to do everything you can to train them, to allow them to be in a place to where they have the power to hurt you. And guess what? They will hurt you. It's not a might and it's not a maybe. Sometimes they'll do it under the guise of imperialist Americans. Other times they're going to do it under the guise of holiness. Other times they're going to do it under the guise of there's so many, but you have to understand what you're getting into. There's no pain that has been brought to me or to my family that has not been worth the people that have been trained and have been sent out to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ around the world. There's no pain that we've gone through that it compares at all with what is happening because of taking those steps. So know the pain you're asking for. Know what you're going to deal with and understand it. When Dad went through church discipline for the first time with one of the guys, this guy actually went to every member's house and told them, I'm going to stand up before the church and I'm going to say some stuff that are not actually true. But this is just the American way of doing stuff. And we just have to do what the American tells us to do. So that's what we're going to do. And so he went through church discipline. And while he was standing there, people were crying for him, but they were crying because they felt sorry for him because this mean American was making him tell lies about what he had done. None of them were lies, but that's what you have to understand what you're signing up for. You have to understand what you're signing up for. Can you imagine? I can't, hanging on a cross, looking down, and the people that you gave the most to are nowhere to be found. That's what you're signing up for. And you need to understand that. You need to be aware of that. And you need to say, I'm willing to pay the price. I'm sitting down before building this tower and I'm ready to pay the price.
Those are the stories that you don't really want to tell in your prayer letter. I don't know what to tell you except that if you're not very careful, you'll get bitter and burn out and want to quit. I think it's well worth it. It's really helped me just to think through this because even what's going on in my life in this past year helps me to think through that and realize, it's not the first time this has happened. But today, this morning, I got this. It's 7:54. Praying for you guys. God bless you and keep you. And I said, well, thank you very much. And she said, you will always be our spiritual fathers. I said, you're very kind. She said, thank you for your teaching. I said, God bless you. She said, you left your country because of love for Peru, and it's marvelous. Thank you for thanks for my family. God used you greatly in our lives. Your words, I can still remember them. God is good. And I just said, muchísimas gracias. And that is from a lady named Clelia. Her husband is Victor Ocampo. And he was one of those first 5 guys.
But you'll get one thank you for every 500 pains.
Yep, that's true. But I think we need to realize that Jesus was hated. And he said, you're not better than your teacher. What do you expect? Jesus was murdered. and no one stepped in to help him. And now he did it on purpose. We know that. But at the same time, the crowd that a week earlier loved him, hollered, crucify him. And so I just would remind you that you are getting set up to do a ministry that's going to hurt you like crazy. But I would challenge you to continue doing it. You would never get hurt by your children if you didn't have children. But then you would never have the joys of having children if you didn't have children. And so all the thrills and all the excitement that have happened in my life have been because I loved with the risk of not being loved back. I loved the risk of not being loved back. And I would challenge you to remember that. I would challenge you to take that home with you. Now, while you're on the field, I always taught y'all Friday night was my youth meeting, but it wasn't what y'all have turned it into. All I did was out on the street, I'd say to people, why don't you come chew the fat with me? And that's literally what we did. And I didn't ask adults. I never asked adults. I only asked for people that were the right age of what I was looking for, 15 to 25. One guy told me that day, I can't work with anybody under the age of 18. I said, well, then make it 18 to 28. I mean, it's no rule I have as a rule. It's just a guideline. It's just a marker. But when they came in, I just played and cut up with them. It was laughing. If you'd have been there for the hour and 15 or 20, whatever might have gone on, you'd have said, ain't nothing but a bunch of friends getting together chewing the fat. It wasn't a Bible lesson, though Bible will be sprinkled all through it all the time. I've said this to you a lot of times. For you to get them in to love Jesus, they probably need to love you first. And
that's good.
What happens is you're the messenger. And if you hate the messenger, you won't listen to the message. And so by having them come in on Friday night and just giving everybody a Coke, and then I would laugh and cut up with them. It was just fun. I would say something, and I'd tell them, ask me a question you want. If they didn't ask me a question, I asked them a question. And we just kept it going back and forth all the time. You want to keep it in a conversation. People enjoy dialogue more than monologue. Dialogue more than monologue. Now, explain something to you. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, that's monologue. But Friday night, dialogue.
But even before each of your services, you were having dialogue before the monologue and then dialogue after the monologue. Like before church, you had them in your office talking about what you were going to talk about. Then you would talk about it. And then after the church service, you'd talk about what you talked about. And so these guys got a depth of the passage that they would never get just from the preaching of it. That was part of the success. So the dialogue and then monologue and then dialogue after, that was a church service for you did not start at 7. A church service for you started at 5:30 or 6. You would have people in the room. Then at 7 would be the church service. And at 8 to 8:30, 9, you'd be just sitting there talking to them about different things, to the point that my job became driving people home because they would have to stay so late that there weren't even bus rides anymore. So at the age of 15, I was out driving a vehicle, just dropping people off because Dad was just so busy talking to people. But it was the same guys that he was training. So, I think that's good to know.
What you're doing during the week is more of a dialogue. So I think a big mistake that you make, because you come from the American Bible college mentality, you think it means stand up, give a lecture, hand out some notes, and walk out. And but if we could immerse ourselves in the life of Jesus, we would find out that's not how he did things. He's walking from ball ground to Canton. He's walking from ball ground to Canton. And while he's walking, they're talking. And it's not like can I ask you to go look through your Bible and find out how many Sermon on the Mount there are? How many times did he have these big congregational preaching times? The majority of it was, let's me and you walk down the road. Let's me and you chew the fat. Let's me and you talk. And so, and let me just tell you something. You don't know what a man thinks when you're doing all the talking. When you're doing all the talking, you don't know what a man thinks. So somewhere along the way, you might say something like, who do men say that I am? Okay. And who do you say that I am? And so I think you want to change the way you're doing this into a much more friendship-based relationship than in your mind thinking I am the big erudite that came from America. I'm the big know-it-all. I'm the big teacher. And so when you're on your way to Canton from Ball Ground, it's going to take good night. It's probably 10, 12 miles. That's going to take 3 or 4 hours getting there. Well, you know, he's not going to walk straight through. He's going to walk for an hour or two, and then they're going to stop and they're going to sit down, and they probably had to pull it out of their mochila, out of their backpack. But in modern days, you stop and get a Coke, and you sit around and eat a hamburger together. Or you go in you ever notice every time I've ever driven any of you guys around, you want to stop by the gas station and to go to the bathroom. But that's not really true. You may go to the bathroom, but then you come out with a drink and a couple of things to snack on. And then you get in the car and you drink and snack and mess up my vehicle. And then now that you've been eating and drinking, you need to stop and go to the bathroom. So you pick up more snacks. It's a relaxed, I'm enjoying it. This is fun. This is my life. I like this a whole lot more than it is. Set your rears down, get out your piece of paper, take notes. I am speaking, and y'all need to pay attention. Chris, you're wanting to say something.
Yeah, I've written some stuff here that you never do stuff alone. If you'll look at what your people want to do, it's going to help you spend time with young men. So, for example, if you were to tell a Peruvian, hey, you can go on a trip, everybody loves traveling. So my dad wouldn't fly on an airplane because that would be too easy. My dad would get in a truck and drive 14 hours to 18 hours to Lima, but he would do it. And it was the most uncomfortable. If you've been through the Andes Mountains, it's like the Road Runner where he goes up one side, does this right here, that does that the entire time. And it was so funny because we had 3 different rows of seats, and we would go to Lima and all 3, because everybody wants to travel. So dad would take advantage of the fact that everybody wants to travel and be like, I'm not flying to Lima. I'm driving 18 hours. Dumbest move ever if you're trying to be good with your time. But if you're trying to train leaders, it's one of the best things you could ever do. So make sure that you're like Lima is a 1-hour flight, and gasoline costs way more on a road than it does with you taking an airplane. But we didn't do it because of that. We did it because and I would sit there, and I still remember I was the youngest guy, and it's a manual truck. The gear shifter's right here. The truck would be so full, and I'd say, Dad, but I want to go. He'd say, you can go, but you got to sit in the middle right next to where I do the gear changes. It was the most uncomfortable thing ever. My legs were together everybody wanted to travel. So Dad took this desire to travel, and he used that to say, I can help you travel. You want to go to Lima? So he'd go to Lima, spend 18 hours on the Andes Mountains, going around these weird mountains back and forth and back and forth. If you get car sick, you are going to get car sick. But of course, my dad, and no air conditioner, so the windows are rolled down, and he's saying, okay, guys, get your Bibles out. Let's read a proverb. So what does that mean? How does that impact your life? He took things they wanted to do, and he used those to bribe them into the position that they needed to be in, so that then he could spend time training and teaching them. I think a lot of us, I think you've watched the mature version of Austin Gardner, to where he goes after he preaches to his desk and people gather around his desk, and you're like, that's what I want. He had to bribe them at first. And when I say bribe them, of course, he never said what he was doing, but they wanted to travel. They didn't eat out much. He would take them out to eat, and they would spend time as they were eating. They would always be talking about the gospel. So make sure, don't ever do stuff alone. If you can do it with somebody, do it with somebody, because that's going to help you get around people. And that's the only way to truly share and to be able to train leaders. I still remember traveling to Lima many, many times, and not only Lima, Camaná and Mollendo and different places around the country that we would go. So just take those desires that people have and say, hey, I can help them reach their desires. But the way I'm going to do it is going to be so full of the gospel that they'll be trained to do the gospel while they're enjoying what they've always wanted to enjoy. So anyway, never do stuff alone. And then I put over here one of the beautiful things that my dad did was he chose a country to go to that felt like they were the underdogs, and didn't only feel like that, but in South America, the worst country in South America is Bolivia. Like that's the country that everybody's like, that's the bottom of if there's a totem pole and the totem pole is in the ground, Bolivia's around there somewhere. Right after Bolivia is Peru. Like it's not the wealthiest, it's not none of that. So dad went to an underdog country, then he went to an underdog city. We are the second largest city in the country of Peru. He went to underdog city. So the one thing about an underdog is they want to always prove themselves. And dad's always talked to you about the aspiring class. That's what these people were. So he did that when he went to Peru. And then I have down here that so that dad could tell how Shining Path changed Peru, because this is not just a biblical principle. This is a principle that works across all borders.
I want to say to you too, guys, the desk in Vision was never what I wanted it to be, because no one actually came in there to have any discussions. It was just the social center. And so people didn't come in there to talk to me. So it turned out to be something that I hated because people would come in and I'd be sitting there and it would be just, finally I'd get up and leave. If you recall, I'd just walk out because no one really wanted to grow or know or discuss and chew about the fat about things. Y'all were talking about everything else going on, and I wasn't interested in that because my goal was to talk to you about the one subject I had. So you did not see that in Vision. Shining Path was started by a guy named Abimael Guzman, and he was in a town called Ayacucho. Ayacucho is known as the Rincón de la Muerte, the corner of death. That's I think that's what it may mean in Quechua or something. And Abimael Guzman had been to China and learned that what's his name? What's that guy's name over there? The guy that was the leader of China that's dead now. But anyway, he'd been over there and learned from him. And he came to Peru to start their cell. So it was a Chinese terrorist cell group. And he taught in a university and he taught educators. But he had students at his house all the time. And he indoctrinated them with the doctrines of rebellion and terrorism. And he took over 10 or 20 years of time that he spent with them, just preparing them. And then they would all go off and to their other cities to teach in schools. And they were prepped. They were trained. And he said, on the right day, I will tell y'all. And so one day he woke up and he said, all right, today's the day. And he spread the word. The rebellion starts today. And over the next 10 years, 50,000 people would be dead. And but he had changed the entire country by finding and training and recruiting young people in college, and then sending them all over the country till the day he was ready. Today, he sits in a cage in a prison in Lima. I'm pretty sure he's still living. And but he radically changed everything in Peru, and he did it through young people. I think that's what you're wanting, Chris. Yeah,
well, I mean, young people, aspiring class that want to make a difference in the world. That's what he got. And guess what happened? He changed the country with his ideology. So, keep that in mind as you're working as well. And so keep that in mind as you're working, as you're training people, keep that in mind.
So as a way of kind of summing up today, no matter where you are, you're looking for people. You're praying and asking God to help you find people. You are prepared to hurt, but don't hold back. Don't hold back. Give them your heart. Give them your life. Give them your story, even though you know that they're going to kick you, pee on you, and destroy you every way they can. Chris will well remember this. The two men that are still serving as missionaries, I'm at the breakfast table one morning and my phone rings, and a lady on the rich side of town called and said that guy from your church has taken my daughter and they've run away. And I said, I did not know that. She said, they're gone. And I said, well, I will find them and get them home by tonight. I shouldn't have said that because I didn't know I was going to be able to. So I called all the guys, got them together, and there was one cell phone. They just started having cell phones that were still very expensive, and so we didn't have cell phones. And so I sent some guys to work over in a bus area, and they could get on every bus and make sure they weren't on that bus trying to get out of the city. And they ran. And I'm going to leave out all the stories about the miracles God worked, miracles that he showed me exactly where they were. We drove straight to them, and they were 3 hours away, and we found them. And Chris had taken me to the gym because he wanted his old man to get in shape. And I had rubber legs. I couldn't walk because they'd killed me the day before. And we caught the girls within 30 minutes of getting there. The two guys hid out all day. By the end of the day, we finally got the two guys. And when I brought them and I got them in there with the team, Chris and a missionary, and the rest of the people that were with me were, they were all pastors or young students. And we got them in there, and they were mad, hate in their face like you couldn't believe, because I had trapped them. They had actually taken a gun with them that didn't work, but they thought they could fake it with it. And I told them, I said, I'm taking you home tonight. And they said, we're not going home. I said, oh, you're going home. If I have to throw you in the car and tie you up, you're going home. If you want to run away tomorrow, you run away and I won't stop you. I'm taking these girls home. One of them was a missionary daughter, and I'm taking this girl home with a rich family in town. And they were mad. So I put the Bible on the ground and I said, pee on it. And they said, we can't do that. I said, pee on it, stomp it, kick it. And then I got down on my knees. I said, pee on me. And it was bad. And finally they said, we're not going to do that. So I stood back up and I said, we're going home, get in the car. So then I took them downtown to a restaurant and bought them a nice meal at a chicken restaurant. Then we drove them home. And by the time we got home, they still hated me. A day or two later, they still hated me. Today, they're both missionaries. One's in Venezuela and one's in Spain. It hurt. It hurt beyond words. The one guy married the rich lady's daughter, and has done a good job. And the other guy married another girl, and he was in Morocco, and now he may be in Peru right now, getting ready to go back to Spain, or maybe back in Spain. I'm just telling you that every good story has a horrible hurt in it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get pearls until sand gets lodged in the oyster's flesh and irritates it. And then it slowly covers that piece of sand up till it makes a pearl. And that's how God is going to use you. So be prepared. Be prepared. So pray, invest yourself in love no matter what they do to you. Forgive when they do you wrong, no matter if they ever ask for forgiveness or not. Keep loving people, keep seeking people, and make it a friendship relationship. Get off your high horse. Stop thinking you're a big shot. And I think you'll see some things happen. Chris?
I would, so, man, this has been good for me to talk about too, because here's one of the questions that I put down is, what would you do differently after getting hurt? And I think that we spend countless hours thinking about what we should have done differently, what we could have done differently, what we should have done differently, how that I got hurt. People did stuff that was not right. Their view on life was not correct. They hurt in every way that they could. They hurt us. If you ask me right after I get stabbed, what would I do differently? I have a list of about 45 things that I would do differently. But the truth of the matter is, over time, as God takes and heals those wounds, you realize I don't know what I would do differently anymore, because I'm not responsible for what people do with what I've given them. I'm not responsible for what I'm responsible for is being true to what I was called to do in training leaders. When you train leaders, you are training people that can hurt you. And so after you get hurt, you're sitting there going, man, oh, I shouldn't have done this, and I shouldn't have done, and they shouldn't have done, I shouldn't have. But over time, you realize they have to give account to God one day for what they've done. And I have done all that I can in loving and caring for people and training people. That has to be top of mind in every single step that you take. I think it's vital to understand that is a key thought process that I think matters for us. What would I have done differently? If you ask me right after it happens, I could give you a list, but right now I couldn't give you anything. You know why? Because I'm not responsible for what people do, but I am responsible for myself, for my integrity, for living in a way that brings honor and glory to God. And what they do, that's totally up to them, whoever they is. It's the disciple that, that got drunk, and it was the disciple that stabbed you in the back, and it was the disciple that it doesn't matter. I have to do what's right, no matter the pain that comes with it. And that's part of counting the cost.
So guys, I think that the most wonderful and beautiful thing you'll ever do is train a whole lot of other men to be in the ministry. But know that the hurt's coming. Ask God to give them to you. Ask God to give you grace and strength to live through it. Keep loving no matter what they do. I always try to figure out what I did wrong that makes things happen. I try to blame myself. It is my natural tendency to blame me, not even the guy who commits adultery. So I've always been the guy who blamed myself. I'm like, if I'd have done something differently, he wouldn't have committed adultery. And so it's really not true usually, but still, I don't like to point fingers as much as I like to think of myself as being at fault. So you'll always find me the first to say, I'm sorry, I did wrong, even though I may not have done what you're accusing me of. So I hope you've learned something. I hope it's been a blessing to you. I want to answer one question that came in from somebody you're not on Zoom with us, so they're listening via YouTube. And then after that, I want to explain some things about what's going on with Alignment Ministries. So the question that came through was, hold on one moment, let me get it. It says, how do you make new church exciting? Many times small is considered odd or boring. And I think definitely it's considered odd or boring. I think that's true. I think that in Peru, it was considered odd or boring. So what made it better was the dialogue before church, the dialogue after church, the dialogue getting everything ready for church, and me preparing them to do it. So I was always having them be involved in what was going on. I think it means that you preach the most exciting messages of the Bible. You don't need to be explaining the reconciliation. You need to be telling the story of the prodigal son. You need to be telling the story of the rich man and Lazarus. You need to be telling the story of David and Goliath. And you want to put the gospel in every one of those stories. And you need to preach like you're preaching in children's church. Like I've tried to tell people when they ask me, I say, you got way too much in that message. Way too much in that message. The Bible itself says that milk, not meat, milk, not meat. And then it says, why are you still drinking milk? So you want to make it more exciting. You want to have very well prepared music or no music. You want to maybe have learning Bible verses and explaining them, but you want to explain them in a way that is fun. You want feedback. You want dialogue. You want, like when you're learning the Bible verse, you want to be able to say to them, the Bible says, for how many have sinned? For all have sinned. What happened? They came short of the glory of God. Came short of the glory of God. That's right. So how many sinned? What did they do? And you got to keep it bouncing. And if I could, oh my goodness, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you need to pretend it's a television program. In television programs, there are several enemies. Dead space. Like, don't hesitate. There'll never be more than 2 or 3 seconds between one thing happening and the next thing happening. You need to remember that you need some, Chris used to call it when we had a TV station, pools of emotion. Pools of emotion. You need to make them laugh or cry, and laugh or cry. You need to work that in. So you want to be prepared. You need to hang them over hell when you preach on Luke 16. You want to make heaven beautiful. You want to make Jesus beautiful. And the most important thing of all is you have got to be over the top excited yourself. If you can't get yourself excited about the message, no one else will be. And so break it up. Don't preach. No 45-minute messages. No 45-minute messages. Maybe better 3 15-minute messages or 4 10-minute messages. Break things up, move things around. Don't make it where they hate it. If you do, it'll be horrible. Chris?
I wrote a lot of stuff down there. If you're not careful when you start trying to go deep in scriptures and depth does not equal boring, by the way, but depth, if you're not careful, what you're going to do is you're going to attract other church members, you're going to attract other church members. And then when you attract other church members, they will dictate what your church looks like if you're not careful. So you've got to be very, very careful. I'm doing an expository series on, and then the guy that goes to the other church that doesn't preach expository has been watching somebody online that says you have to preach expository messages on a book of the Bible that's sequential. And when they hear that, they're like, oh, I'm going to go to that church. So he comes and he brings a couple of friends, and then he expects that church. His expectation is that church is exactly what he wants it to be. So you can't guide your church if you're not careful. That's a very big danger. You really don't want to attract people from other churches. If you attract people from other churches, it's going to hurt your ministry, not help your ministry. They will not understand training men. They will not understand people.
Too much baggage.
They bring too much, and they're not going to want mistakes in the pulpit. Like, you want people that can stand up, and when they say something, they're stupid, but they're stupid because you're teaching them. And then as you're teaching them, you're growing them. So be very careful that when you start, you don't start with the American church mentality, because if you do, you're going to get the American church mentality and then not understand why you can't get out of the American church mentality. Well, you created the monster. Congratulations. It is what it is. So be careful with that. Here's what I would say. I used to tell people all the time about when we were starting our church. We started in a church building, I believe, even smaller than Dad's first church building when we were in Bella Hunda, when we first started. Embrace the awkward. Okay, what makes it awkward? Well, there's not many people. Okay, so if there's not many people, what do you expect? My dad is an expert at this. Okay, make it more conversational. Make it more conversational. My dad will be sitting there and he'll be like, so what does that mean? And you got 5 people, and one of the guys go, well, it means this. And Dad goes, that's close, but not quite. You missed it. Like, he'll make it more conversational, because that's what you expect. If you're not careful, you go back and you're like, hey, I've got a 45-minute message. I'm setting it up and I'm preaching about imputation and eschatology and numerology and pneumatology. And I'm going to discuss all of that from the pulpit because, man, I just heard a great expositor do that. And that's what I'm going to do. Make it conversational. Even at the church where I'm at right now, I have to I have to be very careful because it's a larger building, and we average 40 to 50 people, and I've got to be very careful to make it more conversational. So I would say embrace the awkward. It is awkward. What makes it awkward? Then learn to use that as a tool for communication's sake. If you got a big building, I never stand behind the pulpit. It's not because I'm afraid of standing behind the pulpit. It's because the pulpit is too far detached from the people, because the church it's not full. Use comedy when you're preaching. Talk about things and make fun. Self-derogatory comedy always works. Pretty much in any country that I've been to. So use some comedy. Tony Howath is an expert at, and I learned this when I was in his youth ministry. He's an expert at always calling people's names. So call people's names, and they know it's awkward because there's too few people. Well, guess what? This last week, I probably called 7 or 8 people by name while I was preaching. Clarence, do you ever feel like this? Sylvia, do you understand what that means? Miss Yvonne, do you see how powerful of a fact that is? Miss Terry, so use that, and as you do that, people will connect with you. So use people's names. And then one of the stories I used to always like telling people was, you do realize that the biggest companies in the world started in garages. And so can I just tell you what we're about to see happen here? Microsoft started in a garage. Apple started in a garage. These gigantic companies started in a garage with young people that had a dream that we're going to do something that was going to change the world. And what we're going to do is going to change the world way more than any computer could ever change the world. When they get a hold of that, when they grasp that, it's a life-changing moment for them. And then the biggest thing I would say in your messages is this: always connect to their reality. Always connect to their reality, not to your reality. Connect to their reality. Understand what their reality is. I used to, before my dialogue, I would get together with the guys and I'd go, so I'm going to talk about this. How does that ever play out in the Peruvian culture? I would literally ask those questions, and they'd be like, oh, well, and then they would talk to me. And then the funny thing is, when you're out preaching and you're using the things that you dialogued with them about, they are keyed into that and they're excited about that. So those are just some things that I thought of, and it's 10:21. So I better quit.
I think those are all very good. I know you don't remember me saying this in a Friday class, but I think something that it's pretty awkward is when you have a very small crowd and somebody stands up to preach. Nobody said you have to stand up to preach except independent Baptists.
And
Jesus
scream.
sat down to preach.
And scream.
Sir?
And scream. They don't only stand up, they scream.
So you might be wiser to have sat down in a circle until you need to stand up, and that'll keep some of the awkwardness down. And later they'll say, why did we have to change formats? And now you stand up and say, well, good night. The Lord sent so many people, and they'll understand by then. Well, let me tell you 2 or 3 things. Number one, somebody is desperately trying to hack into my Facebook account. I've had 4 or 5 requests to change my password that I didn't do today.
Mine too. Congratulations.
I guess somebody's having fun trying to hack in or something. I want to tell you a little bit about Alignment Ministries. Several of you have gotten hooked up. If you go to Alignment Ministries, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to put in the code that gives you a free month. And that way, when you're charged over at the other one, you won't be charged at the new one. And so you still got to put your credit card information in. Believe me, I will give you any money back if anybody gets stuck overpaying. I will just simply reject it. We are slowly trying to move off of Kajabi over to Alignment Ministries. And I think that all of that has to do with getting it all under one roof and maybe promoting the Spanish and the English. And it also helps to clear up some of the nasty stuff on my name out there. So we've been doing a lot of work to get that done. If it doesn't work for you, you can let me know. But if you'll go ahead and put the code in, that gives you the month. I will tell Lennon to quit charging you over on the other side. If you ever get charged double, you tell me, and I'll fix it. We're gonna fix all of it. You should not be charged double. a couple of the guys are pastors in the States and are starting a church in America. I want you to know I will give you a massive discount because I want you to still hang around and start paying, but I'll give you a massive discount. You didn't raise the kind of support the guys going overseas are. I am writing articles on a regular basis and putting out gleanings, and I hope that you're keeping up with it. I hope you'll go to the Facebook Alignment Ministry pages and give it a like to help me get that up there more. And we're just working at things, getting things going. Now, I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. You know that I am on palliative care, which means I'm on comfort care until I die. There is no hope of healing what I have unless God just works a miracle, which he could. So I want to do as much as I can in the time that I have remaining, and I'm going to continue busting it. I have a trip right now to Peru, and then it looks like in January I'm going to go to Mozambique, however you say it in English. And then maybe the end of the year, it looks like I may be going to South Africa. Those two trips aren't in. And then Robert and Benjamin and I are looking at going to Equatorial Guinea. Right now, I am as healthy and feeling as I ever was, except for some pains that come and go and all that. And I get tired. But other than that, everything is good. I do want you to pray for me, pray especially for my family. And I will put out a report after we see the doctor. My next prayer letter will go out tomorrow or the next day, because I get my infusion on Wednesday.
So that the kind of cancer you have, explain what is expected and like the stuff that we've talked about quite a bit, just so people can grasp a little bit of what we're talking about.
So less than 20% of the people that get the kind of cancer that I have make it 5 years. Closer to 10% make it 5 years. I am 1 year in. So, on the outside, 5 years, 4 more years. On the inside, I don't know what could happen. I have metastatic cancer, so it has spread. It's in other parts of my body. And so far, the treatment seems to be working, but the hopes that this will be healed are virtually non-existent. I asked the doctor a few weeks ago, and they said, no, you will be on this care the rest of your life. And I said, I am on comfort care, palliative care. And she said, that is correct. And I said, so when do I get out of this? And she said, you don't. Right now, you'll be shocked to know that my treatment is about $1.5 million a year. That is what Social Security and all is paying for that. So that sounds like a lot of fun, making somebody rich. Amen. The infusion's about 70-something thousand, and the pills 30-something thousand, and then all the other treatments that go along with it. So there you go. I have brought y'all up to date. I love you, and I thank you very much for the chance to serve with you. I want to make the most of whatever time I have left. Today at 2:00, some of the guys that are in town are coming over to the house, and you're welcome to come along with them if you'd like. We'll be talking about world evangelism. And then later today, I'm eating supper with another missionary. So I'm going to stay busy. I'll probably be dead, exhausted, wanting to kill myself by the time the day's over, but I'll sleep a little bit tomorrow. Say amen.
Do y'all realize how exciting it is? We got people in Turkey. We've got people in Burkina Faso. We got people in America, even just on this Zoom. The fact that we're able to do this is just really, really awesome. And I thank you guys for being a part of it. We love you guys. I have every one of you guys that are part of the Society of Mentors on my prayer list. I pray for you all the time. And those that are my clients, I pray for them all the time. I'm very, very thankful for you guys, and look forward to what God's going to do with you guys here going forward. I have a lunch appointment, and I have to be out the door by 10:30 at the latest. So love you guys, and I hope y'all have a great day.
God bless you guys. See you later. Thank you very much.